Senator Bernie Sanders is in Brooklyn at a town hall with Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist running for New York City mayor. Just 2 months now until Election Day, President Trump is weighing in, which has many Mamdani supporters saying it's time for the Democratic Party in its entirety to get behind Mamdani and his campaign, considering he brought out so many new young voters to the polls. CNN senior reporter Isaac Dover has more from that rally. Isaac?
Well, Jessica, it's been a weird, wild week in the New York City Mayor's race, and it is continuing with this town hall that Bernie Sanders is joining Zohran Mamdani for. They're at Brooklyn College, right in the heart of Brooklyn, Bernie Sanders' home territory, but also a place that Zohran Mamdani did very well in the primary and is hoping to continue that in the general election. Now, he's doing that as Eric Adams says he's staying in the race, as Andrew Cuomo is saying that things continue to look good for him, but it's Bernie Sanders trying to help galvanize people into seeing Mamdani as the next person to pick up the mantle of his kind of politics, of democratic socialism, but also just a new energy for the Democratic Party. They're going to do that by appearing together, not just in the Labor Day parade, as they did earlier today, but up on stage, really connecting with each other and with what voters here want to be talking about. Jessica?
Isaac Dover in Brooklyn, thank you so much. Let's bring in CNN White House reporter Elena Treen. Elena, you've been doing some reporting on President Trump's role in all of this. What did you find?
Yeah, it's really fascinating that we're seeing the president kind of insert himself into this race, though, of course, it is New York. The president's a New York native, so there is some ties there. But what we're learning, essentially, is that the Trump administration, and specifically people here in the White House, are wanting to clear the field so that they can ensure that Mamdani does not win the mayoral race and does not become New York City's next mayor. And some of that has been some discussions behind the scenes of potentially offering Eric Adams, the current mayor, a job in the Trump administration. We reported, along with my colleagues Kristen Holmes and Gloria Pazmino, that earlier this week, one of the president's top officials, Steve Witkoff, he's his Middle East envoy, sat down with Eric Adams in Florida and talked about the possibility of potentially taking a role in the Trump administration. Some of the discussions were around a potential ambassadorship, including one of the countries being named, we're told, was Saudi Arabia. And so a lot of questions there. I do want to be clear that in our conversations with the sources who were familiar with that meeting, they said that no formal offer was given to Adams. And we also have heard from Adams, including yesterday, kind of saying that, you know, striking a defiant tone when talking to New Yorkers and saying, I plan to stay in this race. I am planning to still remain mayor for as long as he can. And so questions around what this could actually look like. But it is a meeting that happened and they are discussions that are taking place. Now, the president, for his part, was actually asked about this yesterday in the Oval Office. And he specifically brought up how he believes the former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who is also running in this race, that he would have a much easier time beating Mamdani if it was just a one-on-one race rather than having two people trying to take on the Democratic Socialist. Take a listen.
If you have more than one candidate running against him, it can't be one. If you have one candidate, if he's the right candidate, I would say that Cuomo might have a chance of winning if it was a one-on-one. If it's not one-on-one, it's going to be a hard race. And we'll get used to a communist, and he's going to have to go through the White House and get approvals for everything, and we're going to make sure that New York is not hurt.
Now, all of those, everything he said there, Jessica, is strange, because if you actually look at both Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, both of them are Democrats. I should note Cuomo's running as an independent since he was kind of pushed out of the primary by Mamdani. So it's an interesting thing for him to be weighing in. But again, in my conversations with people here at the White House, they argue that they do not want someone like Mamdani being the mayor of one of America's largest and greatest cities. And so we'll see where this goes. Again, from now, we hear from Adams and his team that he is still planning on running. He is hoping he can be the mayor again for another term. But still, as his race grows more untenable, people close to Adams say he could change his mind and consider one of these opportunities here in the Trump administration.
All right, Elena Treen for us at the White House with her latest reporting. Thank you so much. Let's bring in WNYC host and longtime political moderator Brian Lear. Brian, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it. Let's start with the Trump of it all. Why do you think President Trump is getting involved here?
Count me as a skeptic. that Trump really wants Mamdani to lose. You could argue it either way, but I think that Trump would rather have Mamdani as a foil next year for Republicans to make the face of the Democratic Party, as they will frame it, in the midterm congressional elections. Trump does listen to business leaders in New York, to business leaders in general. They really want Mamdani to lose for local purposes. So my guess would be that Trump is kind of torn. And that might be why, as we just heard from Elena, no offer has actually come yet. The New York Times reports the same thing. Count me as a skeptic that Trump will ultimately land on the side of trying to get Mamdani to lose rather than have him as a foil as mayor of New York.
And listen, you watched this all play out where Zohran Mamdani went from 0 to 100 in terms of coming from behind, beating an established candidate like Andrew Cuomo and a sitting mayor of Eric Adams to win that primary earlier this year. So now we have Cuomo and Adams both refusing to get out. They're both staying in, both trying to make this case that they're the one to beat Mamdani. But look, I think conventional wisdom, Trump is right on the conventional wisdom, which is if anyone's going to beat Mamdani, it has to be a one-on-one race. And it doesn't appear like that's going to happen.
That's right. I mean, you could spin the math one of two ways. One is that there are three Democrats in this race: Cuomo, Adams, and Mamdani. They could all split the vote, and Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate who's a conservative talk show host and founder of a private street patrol group, the Guardian Angels, many of your viewers may know him, Curtis Sliwa might win. Or the three more conservative candidates, Adams, Cuomo, and Sliwa, might split the vote, and Mamdani might win. Certainly the polls indicate that that's the more likely scenario. So it's certainly in the interest of those who really want to defeat Mamdani to consolidate behind Cuomo, who's running as the strong number two.
And help people understand, as someone who covers New York City, the dynamics at play between kind of the establishment of the Democratic Party in New York City and Mamdani and the push and pull there between those who support him, but then a lot of Democratic establishment figures in the city who are very uncomfortable with his politics or nervous about what having a Democratic socialist as a mayor might be.
Right. If you're talking about the Democratic leader of the House, Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn, Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, also from Brooklyn, I think their calculus is on the other side of the same thing I was describing for President Trump. They don't want themselves to be seen as supporting a, quote, socialist next year when they have to try to lead their party to victory in House and Senate elections. But on the local level, Jessica, I think it's important for your viewers around the country, around the world to know that you may think of New York as the ultimate blue city in America, but look at the history of mayoral elections the last 30 years. New Yorkers elected Rudy Giuliani for 2 terms, followed by Michael Bloomberg for 3 terms. Each time he ran against a strong, well-known local Democrat. Then we did have Bill de Blasio for 2 terms, who was a progressive Democrat. But after him, 2021, Eric Adams, who was running as the conservative pro-public safety, meaning pro-police, in his case, candidate in the Democratic primary in 21, New Yorkers elected him. So I think especially when public safety is high on New Yorkers' minds, New Yorkers can go for a more conservative candidate. And so this ain't over till it's over.
It is such a fascinating point that you lay out there, and I think it does give so much context to all of this. And I think then you have Mamdani, who really did capture a moment. I mean, to have a movement like that, that Democrats nationally have been yearning for, to try to find their groove again. But there is much debate about, is it just a New York City thing? How does that work more broadly? Is it just about speaking to people about cost of living? And is that the issue that's on everyone's mind right now?
Definitely cost of living. I think the whole Democratic Party, after losing to Trump in the presidential election last year, largely, obviously not only, but I think largely on the question of inflation, shifted to using this word affordability a lot in various races that have been launched since. That's certainly the main word that Mamdani wants associated with him. And people, in a way, are drawn to Mamdani for the same reason that they're drawn to Donald Trump. I know that sounds weird, but people are disappointed with establishment approaches to economics and the cost of living. And so some people have been willing to take a gamble on Donald Trump, who didn't in the past. We saw that in last year's election. Some people are probably willing to take a shot on the Democratic Socialists, the Bernie Sanders style positions. You know, Trump calls him a communist. I think you played that clip. He's more of a Bernie Sanders social democrat, or think Scandinavia, you know, in the context of American capitalism, but with much more government involvement